going to throw. One-on-one, Davis has it. Touchdown! Carolina wins! Carolina is the Coastal Division champion! Javonte Williams to the left of Howe. He'll send him out into the flat right side. Howe looking, standing tall, lets it go, man there! Touchdown! Touchdown, Carolina! The pistol, Jackson behind him. Hands off to Jackson, he tried a jump pass, and it's intercepted! Surratt intercepts it! Holy cow, Carolina's gonna win! And off to Javonte Williams again, pops it to the left. Javonte leaps over a man, crosses the 50, trucks over a defender, spins by another. Goodness gracious, he's down to about the 15, and he did absolutely everything in one carry.
Here's the shotgun snap to Aguilar. Drops back, pressure coming, Aguilar floats it up, incomplete! No flags! Head on back up the mountain! Carolina wins it in double overtime! Loftus, out of the shotgun, throws to the end zone, incomplete! Incomplete! The bell belongs to us! Carolina wins it! 47-45 in double overtime!
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into one of the more somber editions of the Heel Tough Blog podcast on a Sunday morning. You know that something big happened if we're up early recording on Sunday morning before you get prepared for your NFL Sunday. And there's no way that we couldn't, because yesterday was one of the most disappointing games that we have ever witnessed at Carolina. It's probably the worst loss in program history that they suffered yesterday afternoon when they got beat by James Madison at home 70-50. But then it got even worse in the post game when you start hearing reports that the head coach of the team pretty much told the players that if he's the issue, he's willing to step aside. You had one player tweeting out on social media, calling out the fans. So this is about as damaging of a game as you can have for a program without your head coach just resigning on the spot. And that was pretty close to happening too for Carolina. So a lot of different stuff that we have to discuss this morning. We're going to spend a lot of the time on that. We'll talk at the end about, more of the stuff that actually happened on the field and everything like that. But you can't not talk about what happened, after one of the worst games ever. And I think the first thing that we have to start with is whether or not this qualifies as the worst game that Carolina has ever put forth. The 70 points, they lose 70-50 to James Madison yesterday at home. The 70 points allowed is, of course, the most ever in a game at home and ties the program record with the game that Carolina played back in 2013 against the East Carolina Pirates, where they allowed 70 and lost that game 70-41. The thing is that game was on the road. They lost 41 to 19 to East Carolina back in 2018. Again, on the road. This is a game against an offense that was struggling coming in. And when we say that, we don't mean that lightly. This was an offense that coming into this game scored 13 points against a Gardner-Webb team that is 0 on the season. That was 2 weeks ago. And you felt like James Madison, with 2 weeks to prepare for Carolina, could be better. Nobody saw this type of performance coming from them, where they score more points in the first half, 53, which is a program record allowed in any half by Carolina. They scored more points in this game than they had the entire season coming in. They had just 43 points the whole season. They have 611 yards of total offense. They entered the game with 698 yards of total offense. And you had a quarterback who, coming in, was honestly struggling. Before the game, I made sure when I was previewing this game to look up and see whether or not he was still going to be the starter for this game, because he simply was not effective through the air, just 354 yards passing in the first two games. He threw for more than that on Saturday. He had 388 yards passing, 5 passing touchdowns, and also found the end zone twice on the ground. A program record 7 touchdowns scored for Alonzo Barnett III. And to me, I think when you put all of that together, just not even putting into putting into the mix what happened after the game, just that loss itself, to me, it is the worst loss that we have ever seen Carolina suffer. We can't speak for some of the older games because we didn't actually witness those live, but I find it hard to believe that there is a worse loss in program history from Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on the table, mainly because I think we all thought that what happened yesterday was somewhat behind us, that we were not going to come out in a game and look as unprepared defensively as we looked. And that's what it was yesterday. I've never collectively seen a group quit the way I saw my team quit on the field yesterday. And they quit more than anything because they weren't tough enough, I think, to handle the adversity of what was thrown at them. And they gave in. And part of that is, player issue. At the college level, I think it's a coaching issue, because you got to teach your kids to be mentally and physically tough, and our guys wilted yesterday. So I think it's by far the worst loss I've ever seen Carolina earn. Like, you look at the losses to East Carolina when we were getting blown out in the early 2010s. Those were disappointing defeats for a lot of different reasons because of how bad we were defensively. East Carolina at the time, though, was a perennial 7 to 8, 9 win program. Like, they were a really good program that wanted to beat Carolina. Like, for us, that was their Super Bowl game in a lot of different ways. James Madison's got winning pedigree, but this is their 3rd year in the FBS, and they looked more gifted than you. They looked deeper than you. There's no denying they were better coached than you. And look, we said going in that we thought James Madison would give us a game, but I don't think that even in that we thought that was going to turn out to be where they dominated Carolina in every facet of the game. And that's what happened yesterday afternoon in Kenan Stadium. And more importantly, this should not be happening in year 6 with the Hall of Fame head coach. Like, if this happens year 1, when he inherited the program where he inherited it, where, I mean, they were devoid of talent and depth when Larry Fedora left, we could make a bunch of excuses for him and almost justify what happened. You can't do that in year 6. When you've had the success that you've had, second most ACC wins in 5+ years, you've gone to a New Year's 6 bowl game, you've played for a conference championship, you're putting together really good recruiting classes, that shouldn't be happening. And I think that's what's the most deflating, is that it feels, and yesterday was evident, the program has regressed under Mack Brown. And I don't think we ever thought or wanted that to be possible when he came back for a second tenure.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all sort of saw this, maybe not this game, but we could have felt like this was a game that was coming. It wouldn't have shocked me if you would have told me that they lost this game, because we've been here so many times before in the last few years under Mack Brown. This is the 8th time Carolina has been a double-digit favorite in a game and lost. And 4 of those times, including this game, they lost by double digits after coming in as a double-digit favorite. That's the biggest issue, is that you're losing these games to teams that have no rights beating you. It would be different if, and we were saying this last night, it would be different if you were balancing out these losses with big upset wins. Yeah, it'd be frustrating, But at the same time, I think a lot of us would say, okay, but we're finding ways to win a lot of these important games. That's not happening anymore. You had some upsets that Carolina pulled early in Mack Brown 2.0, but really since 2021, since you upset Wake Forest, who was a top 10 team at home, that's it. Since then, you have not been able to find a way to upset any teams. You've had opportunities. Hell, last year at Clemson, you got off to a great start, or you should have gotten off to a great start, and turnovers killed you. So where are the signature wins that balance out the losses that this team has suffered? And, where is the season that really balances out what we saw back in 2021, which was a colossal disappointment? I just don't know that that's there. And that's what is the really frustrating part of this, is that you feel like Mack Brown has done a lot of really good things for Carolina. He's done the thing that I think a lot of us asked him to do, which was come back and make this job attractive to the rest of college football. Because when Larry Fedora was there at the end, it was pretty ugly. We thought, okay, if Carolina can't bring back Mack Brown, who is going to want to take this job, honestly? Well, I think it's a better job now, but I think there is a little bit of danger, and you have to wonder, what this job could be at the end of this season. Because, a lot of people, would say it was an overreaction to say that the season is over based off of what we saw yesterday. My concern, and the reason why I think some of those people are justified for thinking that, I don't know if the team doesn't win a game the rest of the year. I think there's a good chance that they could win maybe 2 or 3 the rest of the year. But they're probably a team that's staring down 6-6 based off of what we saw yesterday and what we saw really the last 2 weeks prior to that, but just kind of said, hopefully this is this team getting a wake-up call. If this thing gets this bad, I mean, what does this job actually end up looking like? Especially with what happened yesterday, where Mack Brown in the post game tells the players that if he's the problem, he's going to step aside. To me, that could damage this job and send it somewhere back into a similar area that the job was when Mack Brown took it, because people would be saying, well, if you're willing to leave mid-season, then how good really is this job?
Yeah, I mean, Spurrier quit mid-year when he realized that his team basically sucked and didn't have any heart. You got to hope that's not the case with what you saw yesterday. But the thing is that it's really unknown, man, because this team threw in the towel against James Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Every team that they're going to play the rest of the way is better than James Madison, more than likely. So if you quit at home against a group of 5 opponent, what are you going to do when you're on the road at Duke this weekend in a rivalry game? And Manny Diaz is, I think they're 4-0, looking to get to 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what's very telling. There's no denying that Mack Brown is part of the issue here. But we knew it when he got hired, that there were issues that came along with his in-game coaching. You look at, what led him to getting fired at Texas was the fact that they quit winning 10, 11 games every year, mainly because they lost to teams they should have never lost to. And there was in-game management that, when he was at Texas, he struggled. All that stuff has carried over to here. The difference is that expectations are different here than they are at Texas, and rightfully so. We don't have the money, the resources, the talent to do what Texas is expected to do. The problem is this program at its best, you build to a 4 to 5 year window, where for 4 to 5 years, you're really doggone good. And you're competing to win a conference championship. In the new expanded playoff world, maybe you're backing yourself into a spot in the college football playoff. in what his 5+ years in his second tenure here, he hasn't even gotten as close to replicating the success he had his first time here. Yeah, you took us to a New Year's Six bowl game, got beat. Took us to an ACC championship game, got blown out. Not even Larry Fedora got blown out by Clemson. And the Clemson team that beat Larry Fedora's team, a lot better than the Clemson team that beat us 3 years ago in Charlotte. And I think that's what's frustrating. Like, this job, we ask you to win 8 to 9 games, beat your rivals consistently, and give us a year or two where we can dream big. And while he's done some of that, where he's failed in the other areas, he's failed miserably. A preseason top 10 team falls flat on its face, goes 6-7. You've been non-competitive against your rival for 3 straight years. And that's frustrating. So it's not all on him. Like, a lot of this is a coordinating issue as well. A lot of it is you've recruited a lot of talent, but you've maybe recruited the wrong kind of talent. And, that's the difficulty in recruiting, is you got to recruit the right kind of players. And what you saw yesterday from that defense is that has a lot of 4 stars on that side of the ball, is they can be as talented as they want to be. If they don't give a damn, it does not matter. And yesterday, collectively, that defense did not give a crap that it got embarrassed at home by a group of 5 opponent.
It's a culture problem, and it has been for a while. We said this at the end of last season, and this is the thing, man. When it comes to Mack Brown, you've made your bed. You have to lie in it. So you had the chance last offseason to say, look, Mack, you have done some great things here in your second time around in terms of bringing in the quarterbacks that you brought in, restoring this program to a spot where it's once again looked at as the, quote, sleeping giant, something that I hate at this point. I hate hearing that because that means absolutely nothing. But you've got this program to a spot where somebody else would look at it and think, I can win. Last year probably should have been it, because it would have been a decent way to go out. Yes, the end would not have been what you wanted, where you faded down the stretch of the season. But you leave with arguably the program's most talented quarterback ever in Drake May, and that's how you go out. You closed out by giving us Sam Howell and Drake May for 5 years, and it was a great ride. But when he decides to come back and you say that, I mean, Bubba Cunningham earlier this week on the Ovius and Giglio podcast says he can be here as long as he wants. And we go from that to suffering one of the, if not the worst loss that we have ever seen in program history. And now you've got him telling the players in the locker room that he will step aside if he's part of the issue. But but this is the thing, or really he said if he is the issue. He is not alone in this. I see a lot of people that are saying that it's all on Mack Brown. It's all on this coaching staff. Yes, college coaches, college football coaches are probably the most important coaches in all of sports, because football coaches are more involved in the outcome of games than just about any other sport. But at some point, the kids have to be able to execute what the coaches are putting forward. You cannot tell me that you are going through this many different coordinators and it's just all on the coaching because you're getting this many coordinators wrong. You can't. And the last few years, it's felt like, the coaches, especially some of the position coaches, development was not where it needed to be. But this year, it felt like it was different. You saw some signs out of the gate. Yesterday, it goes into the culture of the program, because I don't know if it's that the guys quit and just didn't care. I think it's more of when they saw something going wrong, this defense has the mindset that it has had for many, many years. The minute something goes wrong, it is immediately, here we go again, and they completely shut down. And that is on Mack Brown. His team has to be able to fight through adversity. And we have said this for years, and you can go back to all of these different games. The minute something goes wrong, it seems to turn into a complete meltdown. And that's what we saw yesterday. The first play from scrimmage, Barnett picks up a huge gain on the ground. And from that moment on, the defense was completely rattled. They had absolutely nothing. You could say, well, they kind of recovered after a punt gets blocked, they return it, and then Carolina scores 14. You could say, well, they bounced back after that, and the defense made 2 nice stops. That's fine. Ty Adams then gets beat down the field on a deep route. Not sure why the hell he was on the field. That would be a great question to ask Mack Brown in a press conference if he's still up there doing press conferences on Monday. But you get beat on that play. By the way, a guy that's not a starter, has nothing to do with the rest of the group. He didn't play a snap the rest of the day, nor should he have. He got thrown out in a tough position and got beat over the top. Doesn't mean we should never see him again, but yeah, that you didn't need to see him again yesterday. For some reason, that play turned the game completely. And from that point forward, they could not find a way to stop this team. And that shows you that there is a cultural issue. Until you find a way to not let little things like that completely derail your game, and more than likely your season. We've seen this team crumble, with losses that were bad, but not nearly this bad. One can only imagine what kind of toll this is going to take on this team, and that's an issue.
Yeah, the culture issue is that we are a mentally fragile and soft program. Like when you think of Carolina football, I think that's what you think about, because when the going gets tough, we quit. We throw in the towel. And the culture is set by the head coach. And look, when Mack Brown was at Texas, I mean, I watched almost every meaningful game he coached in from like 2007 till the time he got fired. That was a guy that was I'm not going to say a raging lunatic, but he coached with a fire and a passion and an emotion. And he was in his players' rear ends like you want to see your head coach. We have not seen that version of Mack Brown since he came back. And look, every coach mellows out. I mean, even Roy Williams will talk about how the older he got, the more mellowed he got. But when it got time for him to get in a player's face, he wasn't afraid to get in his player's face. We all remember him getting in J.P. Tokoto's face at the ACC tournament in 2015, where he was literally stomping in front of him and yelling at him. And you know what J.P. Tokoto did? He took the coaching and responded. For whatever reason, Mack Brown, we heard all preseason that if you commit penalties, we're going to take you out of the game. We watched last week against an FCS opponent, Des Evans commit 2 penalties on the opening drive and get left in the game, which tells you that they don't think their players can respond to hard coaching, and that they don't think that they can use the bench as a motivator. Football is a sport where, yes, you've got to have the physical tools. You can't walk out there like a toothpick and play this game at a high level. It's also a sport where you've got to be mentally tough, and you have to be able to handle adversity and respond to it, because it's going to happen. In every game, no matter the opponent, something bad's going to happen. And how you respond to that is going to dictate the outcome of whether you win or you lose. I saw a thing last night. I saw a video of Nick Saban talking about, like, it's for the everyday human being average is acceptable. It's okay to be average if you're a 9-to-5 worker. And in football, if you want to be great, you can't be average. You can't be above average. You got to be exceptional, and you got to have kids that want to have that drive and understand that to become that, you're going to get coached hard, you're going to get ridden hard, and you got to be able to respond to that. Our kids cannot, and that's a tough pill to swallow, because you thought when Mack Brown came back, if there was one guy that could change the culture, change the aura around Tar Heel football, it was him. Because when he built the program up in the 90s, Carolina was a tough team, mentally and physically. And they could go to war. I mean, he had them on the precipice of competing to win a national championship. That hasn't been the same case in 2.0, Mack Brown. And, you know, he hasn't done a good job putting coordinators in position to coach this type of toughness and really be able to hold people accountable, which is why it's like, yes, he gets the majority of the blame, but there's blame to go around. It's not just all on Mack Brown. And so, you know, and when it's year 6 in the second tenure and these things haven't changed, then guess what? It's not changing. And so it puts you in the position you got to hope the next guy can do that. But is the next guy going to look at this job the same way he would have looked at this job had Mack Brown stepped down in December of last year? That answer is probably no, which means that Carolina's going to have a really hard time identifying the right coach when this tenure for Mack Brown comes to an end to take Carolina back to a place where we expect them to be at, which is winning 8 to 9 games every year.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about, you know, what happened yesterday. And, you know, it's why Carolina needed to make the difficult decision to say, look, I think it's time. They wanted to give Mack the grace of allowing him to decide when he was going to step away. But, man, Mack Brown, of course he's going to be stubborn. He's been in college football for pretty much his entire life. I mean, he played at Florida State, and that's been his life ever since. And so, yeah, of course it's not going to be easy for him to step aside. But it's one of those things where you just have to do what's best. And this is not what's best for Mack Brown to continue to do this, because you saw yesterday, you know, after that loss, I mean, he was down on himself. He takes losses very hard. And that's the thing that I think we all love about him, but we wish that the players would take the losses as hard as he does. Because here's what happened in the locker room last night. If you didn't know what happened, it was first reported by Inside Carolina. Sources inside the locker room said that Mack Brown came in emotional after the game and said, if I'm the problem with this team, then I will step down as head coach, effective immediately. The players pretty much rallied around him, pushed back, and said, no, you're not the reason why. It's us. We're the reason why we are losing games like this. And begged Mack Brown to please at least finish the season. Now, if Mack Brown had said, look, that's it, I'm stepping away, or if that happens sometime later on this year, Freddie Kitchens is the guy that the players have said that they would want to be the interim coach if Brown steps down. That's at least how I read the article. Now, it could be that the sources were saying that Freddie Kitchens was the guy that the players wanted, or that the sources were saying that Freddie Kitchens was the guy they wanted, rather. But, I mean, honestly, I think the best thing for Carolina is that Mack Brown stays as the head coach for the rest of this year. And then after this season, he steps down and says, this has been it. And I think no matter what the end result is, unless this team somehow runs the table and goes undefeated the rest of the year and makes it to the college football playoff, then I think at that point, and even then, I mean, can't really get better than that. It's going to be time at the end of the year for Mack Brown to step aside. Now, he said to ESPN last night that he is going to be in office today. And so we'll see what if there are any reports that counter that. I wouldn't expect that. Tomorrow will be incredibly interesting. Probably the most important press conference that you will ever see from a football coach for sure. And it's got to be up there in terms of athletics coaches, because we've never seen this at Carolina. We've never seen a guy that just out of nowhere decides that what might be best is that he steps down and then decides, no, you know, I'm going to end up staying because he's convinced by his players. Now, I saw some people with the conspiracy theory that this was just a motivating tactic from Mack Brown. What would you think about that if that's Mack Brown trying to motivate? The thing that I would, I guess, compare it to, if there is a comparable, but I still don't think it's really like this, was when Roy would take the blame and put it on himself and talk about how bad of a coach he was and everything like that. But this took it to an entirely new level that has me thinking that these conspiracy theories probably are a little aggressive.
Yeah, I don't think it's a motivating tactic. I think it was a come to Jesus realization moment where I think he knows he's done all he can do in his second tenure. And man, that's okay. He gave us a really fun 5 years, frustrating at times, but some of our fondest memories as Carolina fans will be those wins that Sam Howell and Drake May led us to in the stage that they brought us to, playing in a New Year's Six bowl game, being in the hunt to be a playoff team 2 years in a row with Drake May at 9-1 and 6-0. Yeah, those seasons didn't finish out the way that we wanted them to, but for Carolina football, just being in those positions in a lot of ways is a success. So, to me, I don't think it's a motivating factor. I think it was kind of a realization that he's done all he can do here.
Mm-hmm.
And wants, and then that's why I think, but I don't think he wants to quit mid-year, because he's not a quitter. That's not who Mack Brown is. I mean, you look at how stubborn he was at Texas when he was trying to get it fixed, because he knows how important that job is and what it's like when you win there. So, I think he's trying to just exhaust all possibilities. And so it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, that press conference tomorrow, it's going to be maybe somewhat awkward if he's up there, because he, 48 hours previous would have basically offered to quit, which we never really heard publicly. When Roy Williams talked about his retirement, you go back, he wanted to quit after the 2019 season. He wanted to quit during what would become the year of COVID, when they blew the game against Clemson, but kept being talked into sticking around and coming back until he ultimately did retire. So I don't think that's on the table for Mack Brown. I think if what he said yesterday is factual, he knows that when this season comes to an end, it's going to be his last, which I don't think he thought was on the table when this season started. But, it's hard for coaches who put so much time, effort, and energy into this, because, and we don't exaggerate when we say this, they don't have a life. Their life is at the office 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're there till probably 10, 11 o'clock at night. They go home, sleep, they're back in the next morning doing it all over again. It's hard for them to put as much as they put into it, to put their players in position to win and have success. And they're not getting the results that they want. And they're not getting the care factor that they want. And I think that's probably what hurt Mack Brown the most yesterday, was the lack of care he saw from his kids in a football game, because I don't think he's ever seen any less care in his life than what he saw yesterday afternoon.
Well, it was really on one side of the ball too. Like, I mean, the offense, and this is what's frustrating. We're right back where we've always been, where the offense is doing everything that they possibly can. And if you say, well, they had drives towards the end of the first half that they should have been able to score on. I mean, how many points do you want this team to score? Like, this offense was not supposed to be as good as the offenses that we had the last 5 years. And you got a quarterback who was making his first career start where he knew he was going to be the starting quarterback moving forward if he performed well. He threw for 475 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game, and you lost by 20 points to James Madison at home. Like, at some point, I mean, dude, it's on this defense to actually be able to help out. And everything that this defense did the first 3 weeks is gone. Like, that's all out the window now. Because now we don't know what to actually believe about this group. Was it really just that bad of a day? Or can this group recover? I would lean probably the the prior, because what have we seen from this group defensively in years past that proves to us that they can have a game like this and bounce back? I mean, last year, you go back to the Virginia game, wasn't nearly as bad as this defensively. That game shattered that defense. They lost all their confidence, and they were never able to gain it back. You go back to 22. Mack Brown's talked about it publicly. The game against App State was what killed that group. And this game, I mean, incredibly similar in terms of just how many yards he gave up and the amount of points. And he gave up even more in this one to a team that I don't even know if they were as good as that App State team was. We have no idea. So I just, like, to me, how in the world does this group recover? I mean, is there any hope on that defensive side of the ball that they can bounce back from this?
I mean, I would say no. Like, to me, one of the more frustrating things that happened was, and it tells you the kind of player that Kamen Rucker is, but we got the sideline shot of him talking to the defense. I think it was still in the first quarter, trying to motivate them, trying to energize them. And, you know, it was very evident that message didn't ring home. The problem is that, you know, and I'm not saying this bad on Kamen. It should have been someone on the field, a Power Eccles, an Elijah Huzzy, a Des Evans, guys that, you know, have been around college football for a while, trying to energize that defense. And there was a greater lack of response to that than to some of the DMs I shoot on a dating app. Like, there was just nothing. And so I don't know where you go from here. I don't know what you do about Jeff Collins. I don't know what to think about Jeff Collins. Like, and I'm guilty of this. I really bought into all the messaging coming out in the preseason about him, about the impact, to the point where I said, I think best case scenario, this guy is groomed to be the guy to take over for Mack Brown when Mack Brown decides he's done coaching. Like, because I think Jeff Collins is a good football coach that inherited a terrible situation at Georgia Tech, almost an impossible situation, and that never his good coach never got reflected. He may have inherited an impossible situation here at North Carolina trying to fix his defense too, because after what we saw yesterday, I don't know what they can do moving forward to become an average defense. Because you're going to see better offenses than what you saw yesterday. And I don't know how I expect you to slow you down. I made excuses for them the last couple weeks where I didn't think they were game planning to really stop Charlotte and North Carolina Central because I didn't think they had to. And, you know, I was wrong, but I didn't think they needed to game plan to stop those offenses. And so I said, you know, what you saw in the Charlotte game, not all that concerning. You look at what they did last week against North Carolina Central. They gave up less than 200 yards of total offense and 10 points. But that first drive, very concerning. And it all came crumbling down yesterday. So it feels like you're basically back to square one. This week in practice should be all about finding guys that play hard and live and die with those results. Because talent, experience goes out the window when you quit. I want 11 guys that are going to play the hardest. Results be damned. And that's what they got to find this week. They got to find 11 guys that play their hardest and live and die with the results. And that's a tough place to be at when you've recruited the type of talent defensively to where you should at least not be giving up 70 points at home to a group of 5 opponent.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically starting the season over is what it is. Everything that you did in the first 4 games of the season needs to just be thrown out. Like, yeah, great. We thought at the time, great win over Minnesota. That win means nothing now. That's gone. Everything that you did in the first 3 games of the year is taken away by what happened yesterday. And so now you're starting at the bottom. And you got to figure out how you dig yourself out of that hole. And like I said, I don't blame people for not having faith that this program can do that. because they've shown you that when they take losses like this, it's hard for them to recover. In terms of just the defense specifically and Jeff Collins, I don't know how much you can blame Jeff Collins, because it's just when you have a game like that, it's a lack of execution. I do think that there were adjustments to be made. There's no question that he deserves some of the blame. But the thing is that he's not the reason that this secondary got shredded. This secondary is just not good. It's just that simple. Like, you've got a guy in Elijah Hudson that we like. Marcus Allen was not the problem yesterday. It was the middle of the field got carved up, and your safeties, once again, are just not good enough. We were told that they felt really good about the guys that were out there. Well, first of all, you only play Jakeem Harris and Stick Lane. I get it. DeAndre Boykins was banged up. He was active, but maybe you didn't want to use him. Will Hardy, I mean, where is he at? How bad does this coaching staff think he is if they're not willing to put him out after repeatedly getting burned over and over again? These safeties provide no help over the top. They certainly can't cover one-on-one. And that was something that James Madison took advantage of. And then just the explosive plays on the outside. We saw it over and over again early on in the game. And once they started to happen, Carolina could not find a way to stop them from happening. It seemed like at one point late in the first half, every play that James Madison had was an explosive play. And it just can't happen. So for this defense, it's you have to put this behind you. I got to be honest, I don't even know if you watch this tape. That's how bad it is. It's one of those games where you burn the damn tape and you just pray you never see a performance like this ever again. But you're right, and I thought they should have done it yesterday. At some point, put different guys in the game. Let's see if we've got anything else, because the group that was out there was not getting it done. And the other thing is, a lot of people will say, well, where was the pressure that they were able to generate in the first few games of the year? Well, first few games of the year, they were allowed to be a little bit more aggressive. I don't know if this defensive line is good enough to win one-on-one up front. Kamen Rucker coming back will certainly help that. But when your secondary is as bad as it is, it limits what you can do as a play caller. You saw early in the game yesterday, Carolina would throw blitzes at James Madison to try to throw them off. And it worked on some of the early drives. The problem is that when you get later into the game, when you're starting to allow those big plays down the field, you have no choice but to drop at least 7, if not 8, most times into coverage to try to stop this team. And so that's why, to me, like with Jeff Collins, I can't butcher him too much for what happened yesterday.
I'm not, I want to just make it clear. I'm not blaming it 100% on him, but I was in a place where I thought maybe this guy could be the next head coach here. And I just, I think after yesterday, you at least got to reconsider that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to rethink about that possibility. At some point, man, Mack Brown has to be held accountable for the word salad he says in August and doesn't follow through with it in September. And this year, he talked about the safety group glowingly. I mean, you would have thought he was a kid at the candy store or a kid on Christmas morning when talking about that safety group. He said that was the best unit on this team. And how deep and versatile and gifted they are. And, I mean, they were getting carved up like Thanksgiving Day turkey yesterday. And I guess where I get the most frustrated is the lack of adjustments with, dude, when you're some of these coaches, Dabo, Ryan Day, Kirby, even like Dan Lane, these guys that are winning 10, 11 games every year, man, be stubborn in what you do because it works. We haven't earned the right to be stubborn. We haven't earned the right to stick to what we've done and rest on our laurels. We don't have any laurels, nothing of anything of significance. And so that's where I get frustrated is, for whatever reason, man, we refuse to try something else. to try to find an answer to the problem, find a different solution. It's like we get told this is what we got and we're going to roll with it. Man, that's not how big boys operate. Like you let someone at Georgia not do their job, their butt's going to sit on the bench. You let someone at Michigan not do their job, their butt's going to sit on their bench. Those are championship pedigree programs. What we would aspire to want to be in a best case scenario. And we just go out there, we give up 70 at home, and we keep trotting the same dudes out there. Yep. The same dudes out there, that make the same mistakes, the same dudes that aren't good enough, the same dudes that aren't tough enough. And, then we get told to support them at no matter the cost. This is a different world, man. I think fans have always had a right to express their opinion and their displeasure because they're the paying customer. But now we are the funding customer. We're funding in a lot of ways your program. We got it right. And Mack Brown doesn't like hearing that. And we learned last night on social media, those players don't like hearing that, which comes back to, again, a culture problem because other players at other programs, they know that if they don't play well, they're going to hear it. And that should motivate you. It should not get in your head and stop you from doing your job.
Well, especially when it comes from a guy that was on the offensive side of the ball. Like, you weren't even part of the issue. No one was looking at you. No one was pointing at you as part of the issue. And look, man, I get it. I get, especially once you saw the reports that came out of the locker room that Mack Brown basically put it on himself and was willing to step aside. I get why maybe you're angry. But, man, you can't go on social media and tweet that out. And it's J.J. Jones, the starting wide receiver, and a guy that, I respect. I mean, he seems like a classy young man. He's done a lot of good things. I mean, he's going to be a guy that's going to thrive when he gets into the sports media. But he basically told fans to be positive or keep your mouth shut because you're not the ones that are on the field. Now, that tweet has been deleted. It was up for, I think, the entire night. And then this morning it has been deleted. I believe that Chris Culliver may have tweeted something as well, but then immediately deleted that one. You cannot tell fans not to have an opinion. That the only opinion that should be allowed is to be positive. And this is not just him. This is members of this fan base that go on social media. There were multiple people yesterday. I don't see how you could boo this team at halftime. You don't see how you could boo this team at halftime. They let up 53.5 to James Madison. This is the worst loss in program history. And you don't understand why people are mad? You're paying for tickets to go to the game. You're paying for Rams Club memberships to fund the scholarships for these players. You are paying them NIL money to be a part of your team. Like, it is as close to professional as it gets. And when it comes to professional sports, fans are allowed to have an opinion and express it. Now, does that mean that you should personally attack players? You should personally attack players' families? No, that does not mean that. That's disgraceful. We have seen that in any level of sport. When people do that, you are scumbags. You should not attack players personally. But if you're pointing out that a certain group is struggling, if you see that as unacceptable, if you choose to boo, you should have that right as a fan. You should not be told, well, we need you to be positive at all times or else. That doesn't make any sense. So you can't be motivated by people that are not happy with what they're seeing. You shouldn't be happy about what you're seeing. That's the problem. It honestly makes you wonder, do you care? And I'm not saying you have to attack your own teammates, but the thing that you're most worried about, and from this game, the thing that you're most worried about is that the fans are not supporting you. The fans are not kissing your ass after you just got destroyed by a group of 5 team who I guarantee you, bet it now, they are not winning the Sun Belt. They will not win that conference. They are not better than Texas State. They are not better than other teams in the Sun Belt. That's pathetic. You cannot say that to fans. They have a right to be angry, and they're not even angry with you. They're angry with guys on the other side of the ball, and they're angry that this is the culture that has been built at Carolina. So I'm sorry, man. This is part of it now. And especially if you are going to get paid NIL money, this is part of what you have to deal with.
Yeah, oh no, you're not wrong. It's the new reality. This is the new normal. When we've, look, it's always been the fans paying. A lot of it has been in booster money. Yes, they get TV money and all that type of stuff. But at every turn, man, the fan is the one that pays. As a fan, I don't mind paying when the product is worth the money. Do not mind. When my team is winning, I'll pay whatever because I want to win football games. I want to win basketball games. I want to win baseball games more than I want to breathe. That's how much winning matters. But when winning isn't happening, and we're seeing the same boat trash that we've seen now for going on 15 years, it's hard to expect people to still pay their money, but it's even harder now to expect these guys that are funding scholarships and NIL and all this other stuff to not voice their opinion when they get upset. And again, to me, that's a culture problem because there are other schools that, man, they know what's up. They know what it is. Like they know if they don't play well, they're going to get booed. You go down the road to Skipper Bowles, you don't think the basketball program understands that if it looks like what we saw yesterday, they're going to get booed off the court? Because it would happen. It will happen. It has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that and they accept that. And they play to a standard to where, frankly, that never happens. And so, man, I love JJ Jones. I think he's a great Tar Heel. He's a great ambassador, I think, for the program. And I think in a lot of ways he was trying to defend his teammates, and I get that. But this is a different time. This is a different era. And frankly, Bud, after you just got beat by 20 at home to a group of 5 opponent, you shouldn't be on Twitter anyway. Like, you should have been, frankly, they should have been back on the field running before a film session. Like, that's what should have happened. They should have never gone home last night because they would have ran and they would have watched film and they would have been told for 4 hours how much they sucked. But that's not what happened. And so it's just frustrating. Because I think he was trying to come from a good place, but it wasn't a good place, and it just adds to the frustration around this program and where we're at, because it was a great example of our guys are worried about the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Yep. That's the best way to put it, is that what you're worried about after this game is going on social media, reading the reactions of fans, which is never a good idea. When you suffer a loss like this, I've never understood that as an athlete. Like, why would you want to go onto social media and read what they are saying about you? And if you do, why is it worth responding? Because you know that you're going to get pushback. So from his perspective, I love the fact that he's willing to stick up for his teammates. That's great. And maybe if you speak to the media, which no players did yesterday, and it makes sense that they didn't. I don't know how Jeff Collins wasn't made available after that game, but that's another story. If you speak to the media, then you can convey your message that you want us to support you. That's fine. But saying to keep your mouth shut if you're not positive is really something. Especially when, the offense was good yesterday. You weren't really the issue. This offense turned the ball over 5 times. That's one of the main reasons that you lost this game. So don't act like fans couldn't be angry about that element either. Like, I'm not, that's the thing. I'm not trying to come across as entitled, but if I pull for this team and I think that things are not where they should be at, I'm going to voice my displeasure. And there's a difference between voicing displeasure and attacking guys. So you are entitled to your opinion as a Tar Heel fan. And by you criticizing what you saw yesterday, by you being disappointed and letting that be known, that is don't take that as, oh, you're not a good fan. No, you are. You care about this program. You want them to win. And the thing that's important, and in college it's a little different, but these fans were here rooting for this program before any of these kids on this roster were even thought of being recruited. And they will be here long after those guys leave for the NFL or whatever the next chapter is. This is a loyal fan base, but yeah, they're frustrated and they have the right to be. So that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast, guys. Make sure you head over to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. I'll give it about an hour. I'll post my recap from today or from yesterday, which will give you the 5 takeaways from the game. That will be more in depth into what we actually saw on the field yesterday. So make sure that you guys check that out. I know a lot of this was really surrounding, Mack Brown and everything that happened after the game. So make sure that you check out that article on the website. Also, if you want to read more in depth about what happened last night, everything that went into what happened in the locker room after the game last night, we've got that article up there right now that you guys can check out. And of course, we will continue to keep tabs on everything that's going on. Anything that comes out tomorrow, I think we will make sure that if anything big comes out, whatever his response is, that's going to be one of the first things that gets addressed. We will have that article for you guys as well. So make sure you're keeping an eye on HeelToughBlog.com for all of that. Meanwhile, on the basketball side of things, to lighten it up just a little bit, Tuesday, you get the ACC schedule. So we'll have you covered with all of that, as well as AJ DeBanza being on campus. Any news that comes out from that, we will have you covered, HeelToughBlog.com. As for the podcast, we will be back. If we have to, if there's some other big piece of news, we will be back sometime here in the early part of this week to talk about it. If not, we'll be back later on in this next week to preview Carolina's game against Duke, a game that now becomes incredibly crucial for the Tar Heels as they move towards or as they get started with conference play and look to move on from this game against James Madison. But for now, Anthony Pagnotta and Josh Marlowe, we're going to step aside here. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. Enjoy your Sunday. And as always, go Tar Heels.